Hello and welcome to the screencast overview for Lesson 7 in Texas Music History. In this module, we're looking at country music, and country music is such an enormous topic in Texas music history that we're actually going to be looking at it for the next 3 modules. And this first module will serve as an overview of Texas music, country music that is. So when we look at Texas country music, a lot of people just tend to think about either modern country, or they think about one of the specific genres that comprise country music in Texas music. But there's really so many different genres within this genre. So these subgenres of country music make up the greater whole, and there's just so many of them spanning over history that will really in this overview just begin to look at a few of them. Your readings will go into the different genres a little bit more deeply, and as I said, we'll explore some other aspects of country music more in depth in upcoming modules. Okay, historically we need to look at immigrant folk traditions that have helped create and define the country music legacy in Texas. We've got the arrival of Anglo immigrants. The first came in 1568 and were rather quickly rebuffed by the Spanish Empire. But we start to see in 1821, when Mexico declares its independence, a lot more Anglo settlement coming into the region. The people that came in had traditions and heritage going back to the British Isles, including a very rich tradition in balladry. And these are songs that are kind of story songs that express different kinds of events or news. And of course, the other main tradition that Anglo settlers brought to the region, along with other European settlers, but this becomes fundamental to so much of early country music, is the fiddle. As country music gets established as a genre, as with any other genre of music and any other kind of cultural attribute, there's going to be cross influences with the existing and newer arrivals to the region as well, and all of those influences contribute significantly to the development of country music over time in Texas. Kind of don't think of country music these days without thinking of cowboy hats and cowboy boots, and of course that image extends well beyond Texas, but I think Texas had a lot to do with it. Texas cattle country, Texas ranching tradition was learned from the Mexicans, who of course learned it from their own Spanish heritage. And so the vaquero tradition was learned by Texans, Anglo-Texans, as they arrived, and wound up, which is something we will be looking into more deeply later, wound up having a pretty significant impact on the image of country music, if not the actual development of the material. But the cowboy influence on Texas music is so significant that we are going to spend a module looking at that, looking at the kind of traditions of actual working cowboys and how this cowboy image got overlaid over country music kind of as a whole. The other aspect of Texas country music that we're going to focus on for an entire module is Western swing, called Texas swing originally at its roots, because I think that this is one of the indigenous genres to Texas, and it winds up having an enormous influence throughout the 30s, 40s, and some of the 50s. Okay, any look at country music has to start with Jimmie Rodgers, who's known as the father of country music. You'll be reading more about how he was discovered. And one thing that I think is really important to point out is that this is a publicity picture in which he dresses up as a working cowboy. But Jimmie Rodgers really had a lot of different looks. He wasn't a cowboy, and he didn't hold completely to the cowboy image or into cowboy-themed material in his music. But he was one of the first country musicians to be discovered which you'll read about, and has kind of set the blueprint, along with a couple of other acts, for future country music. He's significant also to Texas music because he did move to Kerrville, Texas, and lived there for quite a few years. Another subgenre of country music, and one that I think is very much identified with Texas, is honky-tonk music. This is a picture of Ernest Tubb, who's known as the Texas Troubadour. And honky-tonk music comes a little after World War II. We start getting the introduction of those themes that kind of define country music now, themes of heartbreak and cheating and different aspects. George Jones is another Texas musician who really exemplified kind of a raucous early honky-tonk sound, and we're going to listen to one of his earliest recordings in the podcast. Now, these two slides are kind of fun because with the late 60s and early 70s, we get the rise of the outlaw movement that comes to define a lot of Texas music, and especially a lot of Central Texas music. A lot of it happened in Austin. So these are early pictures of two of the vanguards of the outlaw country movement, and I'm just wondering if you can guess who they are. Go ahead and guess before I move to the next slide, in which I will tell you. That was Willie Nelson and Waylon Jennings. Willie and Waylon both tried to fit into kind of the Nashville sound that was happening, and both found that it was too constrictive. So between Nashville and Texas forged this kind of outlaw movement where the rules that as Nashville was putting them down were being broken. Texas also has a very rich songwriting tradition, and this is a picture of Cindy Walker, who is one of the first really successful songwriters. She had a recording and performance career as well, but really left her mark as a songwriter. And that songwriting tradition continued through the cosmic country, cosmic cowboy era. This is Townes Van Zandt, who many, even non-Texas country artists, consider to be kind of the figurehead of a very rich tradition in Texas songwriting. And Texas songwriting, as you'll read more, has a lot to do with that ballad tradition, and is also influenced a lot by some of the Mexican and Spanish traditions. Can't talk about Texas country music, can't talk about songwriting without mentioning Chris Christopherson from Brownsville, Texas, who not only is one of the most famous country artists and songwriters, but he's quite a cultural icon at this point, particularly with regards to his movie roles in the 70s. Just as with anything else, any other kind of Texas music that we're looking at, diversity becomes a major part of it. Just one of the many Hispanic artists who have played or been influenced by Texas country music is Johnny Rodriguez. You also have Freddie Fender, who goes on to join the Texas Tornadoes and started off his career as a country music artist, also singing with bilingual lyrics. And Texas has really given country music some of their most iconic stars, and one I really like to discuss is this guy. This is a picture of his very first gig at Cheatham Street Warehouse in San Marcos, Texas. And of course, I'm speaking of George Strait. And the reason I like to discuss George Strait, beside from the fact that he graduated from Texas State University, is that he really has embraced the traditions of Texas country music, even as he went to Nashville and became one of the biggest stars in country music. So when we talk about Texas country music today, we're talking about George Strait, but we're also talking about a genre that encompasses so many different influences and traditions that we see in Texas music. So it's been influenced by the blues, it's been influenced by rock and pop. Western swing is still played throughout Texas and beyond. And also wanted to mention that there is a genre that some people refer to as red dirt music. And this is kind of a hybrid rock and country genre that's really specific to Oklahoma and Texas, and has wound up launching a lot of artists out of just a Texas career into a national career as well. So that is it for our screencast. Enjoy the rest of the module.